He's the guy that I'm talking to is probably the most famous conservative guy in Israel right now. Gadi Taub. He's a great guy, and I just love him. He actually, believe it or not, he's non-religious, but he oftentimes refers to prayer and God is answering our prayers or whatever. And what we just watched right now is like insanely historic. As a matter of fact, I had a Bible study that I had set for you guys, but I just decided based on the nature of what's happened, I thought that at least some of you would want to know and talk about it a little bit. So we'll do, say again?
Put on your Speedos, we're going to the Riviera.
Oh, because of Gaza. Speedos is weird. If you want me to wear Speedos, bro, we need to talk to Maria. We need to have a conversation with your wife. Pray for Mason, everybody. He's one of those, but you know the funny thing is they won't let you in Gaza, bro, because you're a Palestinian. So I don't know what to do about that. Can you mute this for a second? Yeah, I could let you in through Rafah. How about that? We'll go from the south. We'll go from the northern Egypt. Yeah. Well, maybe if they have the tunnels left, we can go in through the corridor. What do you think? Okay, so let's pray, and then we'll actually do a Q&A thing. You guys probably saw that it was a Q&A. Do you have the mic? You have the mics ready? Okay, great. So let's pray. We'll get into it. I'm sure there's a lot of questions you guys have. How many of you, by the way, really quickly, are aware of what's happened? Okay, only a few of you. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's this hot off the press, so we'll talk about it. Father in heaven, we just give this time to you, Lord. We pray that you would guide the conversation that we have together as the body of Christ, Lord. And Lord, we pray, God, that you would use the time that we have, that, Lord, we would just get excited about the fact that your word is true and that you're on the move. We pray for our president, Lord. I've never been able to say with as much confidence as I'm saying right now that I'm so thankful and proud of our president. I thank you for what he's doing, Lord. And I thank you, Lord, for the fact that our country has a bright future because of what we're doing to Israel. And we're just grateful, Lord. Thank you so much for all you've done, Lord. We look to you and thank you. We ask these things now in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, there was a meeting in the White House with Bibi Netanyahu today. If you remember, Bibi was the first world leader to be invited to the Oval since President Trump was inaugurated. When that happened, I made a big video about it. Matter of fact, I released the video yesterday, and I'm glad I'm on record for releasing it yesterday, where I said that this was huge. It was historic. Now, I got a lot of people accuse me of being extreme and emotional, and you're going too far with this, and so on and so forth. Well, guess what? I was wrong when I said that yesterday, or when I released that video yesterday, because it was more historic than I ever thought it could be. Because a couple of things, we know early on there was going to be an issue, because when they were scheduled to only talk for a few minutes, not really a few minutes, I think they were scheduled to talk for like 45 minutes, whatever, they talked for hours. Which I knew would be the case because there was a talk with MBS prior to that time, Mohammed bin Salman, which is there's so much to say about all of this. There's so much to it. But he is in the Oval. He gets questioned about Iran and Iran's resistance to everything that they're wanting to do, and the issue of him being assassinated, or the attempted assassinations on his life by Iran, came up. This is while Bibi's in the Oval. He's sitting behind his desk and he's signing some executive orders. One of the orders that he signs, and he tells everybody, this is an order that basically says this, and he looks up at the camera and he says, if Iran tries to assassinate me, we will immediately wipe Iran off the face of the earth. And he used that language. He said, we'll just destroy them. We'll wipe them right off the face of the earth. Say again? Yeah, annihilate them. Yeah, he used that as well. He used the term annihilate. So we thought, okay, yeah, some big stuff's coming out of this. This is going to be a big, big conference, to the point where I just told myself, I'm going to wait until the conference starts, and then I'm going to watch it live, and I'm going to react to it. My reaction to that is going to come out on either Sunday or Monday. I don't know when. I'll put it out. It's already been recorded. It's a 2-hour video. But some of the most consequential things that came up, perhaps the most consequential thing that came up in that conference, is President Trump's solution for the Gaza problem. His solution for the Gaza problem is take every Palestinian out of Gaza. They're gone. Kick them off. He says the United States now owns Gaza. I'm not kidding you. Like, it's not a joke. And he says they're going to bulldoze the whole Gaza Strip, all of it. They're just going to bulldoze it all, and they're going to rebuild it to make it a beautiful place. And then he gets asked during the conference, do you plan on bringing the Palestinians back to Gaza? And his statement was, no. If I bring them back, they're going to destroy it like they've been destroying it for the last 40 years. We're going to make it an international spot for people all over the world to come visit. And there's some Palestinians can come and visit, but we're going to make it a place for the whole world to basically come. It's going to be a resort, basically. Now, here's the thing that's interesting with that. I guarantee you that that does a whole bunch of things that not only benefit the United States of America, but that does a whole bunch of things that benefits substantially Saudi Arabia. It benefits Egypt. It benefits lots of benefactors that are on the Mediterranean, because several things end up happening. Number one, Gaza gets an airport that's international. Number one. Number two, if they build a massive, large international airport, that will also become a new security hub. And they will either put a partial airbase in that airport, military airbase, or they will build a separate airbase in Gaza. The other thing they're going to do, because they have to do it, is they actually have to start or build a naval base on the Mediterranean. That'll be the first time in American history that we see a naval base built on the Mediterranean with that kind of size, right? Because that would be a base that would have to host a carrier group, very likely. That's my guess. The Mediterranean is big, as small as it is, but I think that's going to end up happening. And if that takes place, then that becomes the most consequential security point on the Mediterranean than any other point that we've seen. What could have been the most consequential security point was the area on the northern coast of Libya that we believe Russia's going to end up taking when they win the civil war in Libya, in between Tripoli to the west and Benghazi to the east. And if you look at that whole area where there's that little Gulf corridor that exists in northern Libya, that would be the ideal place for Russian assets to be placed if their greatest concern is to be able to create security for themselves and to be able to project themselves further north to deal with some of the ongoing problems that have existed with Turkey, Cyprus, and many of the other areas that are over there. The other thing that it ends up doing is it provides permanent guarantees to any of the partners that normalize with Israel, because if for whatever reason Trump is gone and there's nobody that has the kind of resolve that he has, it's not like you can overnight pull all of those assets out, and it's not like you can change possession of that territory by any type of law. The bigger thing that is even more brilliant with that is technically Gaza is still owned by Israel. Gaza is still it's part of Israeli sovereign territory. So this is not going to be one of those things where there has to be some like, we own it now, we're the new sheriff on the block, leave us alone. No, it's just simply Israel saying, you know what? We're not going to occupy this anymore. You have it, America. It's yours. That ends up creating all kinds of new issues for all of us. But quite frankly, I think what it's going to do is it's going to permanently eliminate Hamas and the harmful Palestinian population. And what it's also going to do is it's going to give Palestinians who really do want to live a hopeful life, a true start where they can go to other Arab nations that will help them and facilitate that process, while at the same time being compensated for and being incentivized for what they're doing with the Palestinian population. Now, here's the part that sounds gross, and here's the part that sounds very uncomfortable to say. If you do have a situation where the Palestinian population or any sympathizers with Hamas ends up getting stirred up in there, a proxy of Iran or anything like that, it would be another Arab country that would retaliate. And let's assume that we had another Black September type of situation like what we saw happening in Jordan during the time of the uprising in Lebanon and so on and so forth. No one's going to say anything because it will be something that was done by an Arab country, and Israel is not going to take the kind of heat for it. So this is going to end up becoming very consequential to us. And perhaps the thing that's the most significant about all that's been happened is the fact that we just saw a viable pathway to the geopolitics necessary to allow Ezekiel 38 to happen. I never would have guessed it in a million years. If you had asked me this morning what would happen as a result of this, I would have never guessed this, ever. And this happens every single time. Like, you guys get it? Like, every single time I say I think something's going to happen, I get it wrong. I never get the end game wrong because the Bible tells us the end game. But how God does it is always far more spectacular and far more irreversible than anything I could possibly imagine. And I think it's absolutely remarkable. I think it's something that we've never seen. And I think we're all blown away by this. Like, every single one of us are just shocked. Like, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime, ever. It's amazing. And then think about like this. It makes so many things that Israel's been trying to get done for 30, 40 years. It makes those things a natural byproduct of this move. Can I give you one example? Bebe started talking about a NATO-type alliance in the Middle East. It was something that he's been talking about for a while. It comes out in different shapes and sizes. When he addressed the UN this last time, the largest terrorist organization in the world, when he addressed the UN right before Nasrallah got killed, he got up there and he said, I would like to do, and this is the first time he used the word NATO, I would like to do a Middle East NATO-style coalition in order to encourage peace. They called him crazy. They said that's kind of a nutso thing. Well, guess what? You have to build a Middle East NATO-style coalition if you're going to house and safely facilitate Palestinians that actually want to live a nice, healthy, productive life. So there's so many things that people are not thinking of right now that have instantly happened overnight that couldn't possibly happen if this ends up taking place. So the biggest barrier that the president has right now is going to be how you move people. That's going to be the biggest barrier. And then how many people are going to want to be moved? I'm guessing that an overwhelming majority of the Palestinians are going to meet it with resistance until they're guaranteed that somehow, some way, they're going to have a shot at maybe building a better life. But that's assuming that they're not taking on the Islamic fundamentalist side of all of this. No matter what, it's going to end up being a very interesting situation. Now, the other thing that's also really unique is he got asked, what if Hamas doesn't keep to their side of the bargain? He said that it's going to get bloody. He said it's going to be violent for them, but we're going to solve the problem really quickly. He also said the same thing about Iran. So, I mean, all of this is just absolutely wild. And I think the reason why the president has no problem talking about it getting bloody or talking about getting rough or violent is because he knows that he's going to be able to utilize Israel as the proxy for the process of his land acquisition. And he did say that he's going to bring in our resources. My guess is the Army Corps of Engineers are going to have the busiest time of their history, is my guess. I'm certain that that's who he's going to bring in. I think that he's not going to bring in massive groups of military into that area. I think he's going to bring in smaller groups, and I think he's going to bring in more capable groups. So people that are attached to special forces types details, I think you'll see a lot of them there. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out. But it's amazing. It's something that I never thought in a million years would happen. And I'm talking to my Jewish friends and saying congratulations, because this is huge. We've never seen anybody. He is President Trump by far is the most consequential friend of Israel than any other U.S. president in U.S. history, by a long shot. We've never seen anything like it. So that's what's going on. It's a lot to take in, and there's a lot going on. So questions? Anybody have questions about this? Yeah, Mason. Oh, he's going to give you a microphone so that people in the audience can hear you. Clown. You're such a clown. Okay.
So the Gulf, Jordan, Egypt, and the States said they don't want to deal with the Palestinians.
Yeah.
They said, under the guise it's humanitarian. They're taking them from their land, yada yada. So what are you gonna do with? What do you suspect is gonna be done with 1.5 million?
I think this is an Overton window issue that's being pushed. I think that when Trump brought it up, he brought it up. It's a really fantastic question. When Trump brought it up, I think he brought it up under the auspice of temporarily locating them as refugees instead of integrating them or making them permanent citizens. And so the bargaining chip is removed when you're doing it under the auspice of refugee status, because of the rules and how they can enforce the laws and what they can bring to the table. I suspect that if he goes back to the peace treaty nations like Jordan and Egypt, and he says, you will have certain security guarantees in exchange for you making them citizens, and you will be allowed to vet them as you wish, and you'll be allowed to prosecute them as you wish, or deal with whatever you want to bring things order, that would be good. I suspect that Jordan will jump on that deal because Jordan is already concerned about the Kurds that are in northern Syria, and they're also concerned about the Kurds that are in the southeastern portion of Turkey. So I think that they're going to be very quick to want to jump on that. I also think that the portion of the Sinai that Jordan shares with Egypt is also a place of concern, because that used to be a corridor for terrorist entry to go in. So Jordan is going to be very happy to get that level of support from the United States of America. And if I were a betting man, I would probably bet the farm. And if I heard myself saying this this morning, I would probably, not this morning, maybe 2 weeks ago, I'd probably say, what in the heck are you thinking? But if I was a betting man, I would probably bet the farm that if Egypt kicks back a little bit more, then El-Sisi will probably be given the guarantee of taking all of Rafah and making it part of Egyptian sovereign territory, which would mean every portion of the Gaza Strip south of the Philadelphia corridor would be given to Egypt. And I suspect Egypt would take it so long as they kept to the condition of sealing the tunnels. But I don't think that condition would even be one that they would have to meet, because the Army Corps of Engineers would close those tunnels. And where they would start is they would start in the area of Han Yunis, just because of the centralized nature of where what those tunnels are doing. I think they would also simultaneously go to northern Gaza as well as southern Gaza and eliminate all of those tunnel access. And I think the security guarantee alone would be enough to get them to think about it. Now, I think the nail that would close the coffin, the final nail in the coffin, would end up being the financial subsidy. I think that the financial subsidy that Saudi Arabia has already guaranteed to Egypt is being supplemented by the fact that Saudi Arabia is being given some promises by the United States of America for their weapons purchases. But I think the other area that I think is more also important to consider is that Saudi Arabia now gets to sweeten the pot in how they subsidize Egypt because of the use of the Sinai. Or not the use of the Sinai, because of the use of the Suez. Remember, because of the operations that would ensue as a result of all of this, they would probably block off for a while as they deal with the Yemen problem. They would block off access to the Red Sea. They would make the Red Sea a military corridor, transportation corridor. And I would suspect that in exchange for Egypt being subsidized for the use of the Suez Canal, the United States Army Corps of Engineers would fix any of the pending issues related to the Suez, and there would be a contract very similar to that of Panama. So the United States would take functional control of the two most major canals in the world, which would give them military dominance. Now, that would be specifically important because if we build a naval base that is on the shore of Gaza, and that naval base is home to at least one carrier group, and we have a whole bunch of super fast functional destroyers and subs, we would love to have the use of the Suez Canal to give us direct entry into the Red Sea, thus pushing us into the Indian Ocean and taking us where we need to go if we need to go immediately to the Persian Gulf. And then we're close enough in proximity in the Mediterranean to be able to launch missiles into the Caspian or the Black Sea. And we also have immediate access into the other side of the Atlantic if we have some problems in the southern portion of where the NATO alliance countries are. So it puts the United States of America in perhaps one of the most advantageous and prestigious positions in the Middle East. And it could even open up the door to allow the United States of America to give Russia some things that it wanted without having to conquer lands, especially if Trump decides that he's going to contribute to the functional dismantling of NATO. If NATO gets dismantled, then these countries are going to think twice about their security considerations. And with all he's been doing with tariff wars and all that kind of stuff, he's going to make this a win-win for everybody that's involved. By the way, let me just simply say this. MBS also, through his, I want to say his energy minister, said that they may consider investing as much as $1 trillion and not $600 billion in the United States of America. I am willing to bet that probably half, if not a quarter of that amount, is going to go into rebuilding Gaza for a guarantee of a modification in the edge of the trade corridor, which allows them to go further north into a portion of the Mediterranean that would give them direct entrance into Cyprus as a midway point into areas like Rome or anywhere in Eastern Europe. I think that it could do all of that. And the other thing that it could also do is it could provide for Turkey a compromise, because Trump has a good relationship with Erdogan. It could provide Turkey a compromise in being able to bring Saudi Arabian assets in helping to do his offshore drilling that's right in that area just south of right in the southern portion of the Turkey border that borders the northern Mediterranean. So this could end up becoming a super big, fat win-win situation. I mean, literally, everybody could benefit from this immensely, and that's what I think would happen.
So you hit 2 points.
Okay, can you get the microphone so people can listen?
You hit 2 points.
Okay, yep.
Black September, how do you prevent that?
Yeah.
Probably a lot of people here don't know what that is.
I don't think Trump really cares about preventing Black September. I mean, he does, but so Black September, I'm referencing to basically what Jordan did when you had a rise of this same Palestinian population creating some very nefarious action from within the country, and then basically taking probably what the estimate was as high as 30,000 Palestinian lives were taken. And nobody blinked. Nobody even, and they basically kicked the Palestinians out of their country. So that's what I'm referring to. Anyway, so your question?
And we have the 5th fleet in the Gulf.
Yep.
So this would be a supplement, because it'd be, if you're saying put this next fleet in the Mediterranean, they wouldn't have to go through the Suez.
That's right. Yeah. So this is my guess. My guess is they would take that fleet. I'm thinking way ahead, right? What I didn't know what it was, the 5th fleet. I didn't know what their name was, but they would take that whole fleet and they would stick them in the South China Sea as a supplement to the Philippines to guarantee free trade or easy trade in that area of Asia because of the muscle flexing that China's been doing in that area. I also think that what it would do is it would make China think twice about them invading Taiwan. So my thought wasn't complete. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself a little bit.
After Gaza's built, I'll be the emissary to go over there and start Calvary Chapel Gaza for you.
Bro, you'd probably be living large. You probably would be. I mean, who knows? We'll definitely take a trip over there.
Do you think that with this level of U.S. involvement in that area now, that it makes America relevant to end times prophecy, the wars, and everything that's going on over there?
No, probably not. And the reason why is I think it makes us less relevant. And I'll tell you why it makes us less relevant. Because everything that I'm seeing right now is pointing to God's blessing on this nation more and more. And everything that I'm seeing seems to be pointing to what may be the largest spiritual awakening we've ever seen in world history. And if that's the case, when the rapture happens, America becomes instantly inconsequential. And what's even more interesting is the president is setting it up that way. It's almost like he studied this for his whole life and he set it up that way. I think he's being supernaturally inspired. But you have to catch what's going on. It requires familiarity with the geopolitics of the region. It also requires familiarity with the mindset around the culture. Donald Trump is in essence setting up or proposing setting up an infrastructure that if U.S. involvement completely slipped, if we had another Afghanistan type situation where we had a cuckoo, basically a zombie taking over the presidency, and America just became a bunch of guys, wearing machine guns and high heels, then it would not affect the rest of the nations, because the nations will have been given the tools necessary to logistically maintain the security assets, even if the United States of America becomes absent. Now, the one thing that you can't account for is who ends up filling the vacuum that would give somebody that prestigious edge. So right now, the way he's setting it up, as long as the United States of America keeps doing what it's doing, it's the big daddy in the game. There is nothing else. But the only way the United States of America is willing to stay the big daddy in the game, the only way they can do that is by not being the warmongers that it's been over the last 40, 50 years. So the idea here has to be that you remain inconsequential in the idea of playing the big game of risk, but you stay consequential in the ideal of allowing peace amongst these nations to continue to grow. So for example, all it would take would be one switch, one maneuver, something different, that if a big country like Russia now goes and attacks Israel with a conglomerate of other nations, America could say, not my fight, and move on, or America could not even be there because of the rapture. See, that's my point. Right now, it looks, no matter what way you go with it, it looks like it's a perfect setup for Ezekiel 38. Because he keeps saying it, not my war, not my problem. And by the way, there's a lot of people in the mainstream that love it and support it. I'm even watching a guy like Tucker Carlson, who in my opinion, I've perceived as being relatively anti-Semitic, get in a nasty argument with Piers Morgan recently, defending the United States taking a stand for Israel. And he made Piers Morgan look like the anti-Semitic guy. So, minds are changing. And people like Candace Owens are looking crazier and crazier and crazier and crazier because she is crazy. So it's very interesting to see where all of this is going. It's really, really interesting. I'm going to try to, within the next few weeks, do some really cool interviews of some people that I think the world is going to want to hear from. But I do think that based on your question, all it does is helps the scenario. It doesn't ruin it, from what I can see. Okay, yes, sir.
So I'm still trying to process the Lakers trade, and then you hit me with this tonight.
The Lakers trade. I could care less.
Like too much to handle at one time.
Yeah.
So we won't talk about the Lakers, but okay. I love everything you're saying. I didn't know anything about it until I came in here. Mm-hmm. I love everything you're saying. I hope it all happens, but three things have come to mind while I've been listening. One is that you sort of brushed over, where do you put 1.5 million Palestinians that nobody wants at all?
Trump is saying 12 countries already are willing to take them.
Okay, well, let me ask all three questions because you have a tendency to get wound up.
No, come on. What are you talking about?
So second, and then I got a third. Second is that we've been hearing for years now that our military has fallen apart. It's got woked out. We're totally unprepared for any kind of war.
Yeah.
And now what you're talking about stresses our military further than it's been stressed in a long, long time. So I wonder, how does that work? And what happens with Ukraine?
Yep.
Do we just give up on that? Because
No.
we're not like Jesus. We can't turn a few fish into feeding 5,000.
Yeah.
I don't know how Trump handles all this.
Okay, so let me say this.
Okay.
With respect to your second question, I assume your third question was Ukraine. With the second question, it actually helps the United States military to do this than not, because what it will inevitably do is it will inevitably justify the position that Donald Trump has always had to take the existing assets and resources that have been misused and use them the way they were intended to be used, number one. And then to take the private sector that has been underutilized to accomplish many of these things and bring them into play. By the way, this is how he substantially grew the military when he first came into office. As a matter of fact, the naval resources that we had when he first came into office were substantially diminished. they got into very, very strong positions within the first year of him being in office. And that's with people losing their minds with him, absolutely going crazy. So there's a lot of underutilized resources that are going to be utilized the way they were intended to be used. And then, you also have to keep in mind that he's taking groups that have not been traditionally regarded as useful, and he's beginning to put them into play. One of the great examples of this are all the different National Guards that are around that probably represent some of the highest skill sets that we have in the country, militaristically speaking, and also engineers that have never been used for anything, and they're now beginning to be used in areas where they're already seated and utilized. So in other words, we're taking a lot of these National Guard reservists, and we're now putting them, full-time or reservists, and we're now putting them, even ROTC guys, and we're now putting them in areas localized to them, and then we're taking those assets that we would traditionally leave here and not bother to bring into international waters or lands or whatever, and we're taking them over there. But again, it's a very complicated process, because what you have to do is you have to take existing machine assets, intelligence assets, weaponry assets, and you have to put them in very strategic spots so that if something were to happen, your ability to engage is not going to affect what else exists. Examples of this include the fact that he's going to build an Iron Dome system. It's already been built. It's just a matter of deployment. It's just a matter of how we use it. How do we know it's already been built? Because we built it for Israel. We built it with Israel. We have an agreement with Israel. Israel can't use their Iron Dome without us agreeing to them utilizing their Iron Dome. Their rules of engagement are controlled by what we approve and what we don't approve. So there's a lot of these things that you have to look at. And this is, by the way, without me completely and fully understanding how the hierarchy in the military works. And it's without me understanding at all how the logistics side of it all works. But what I do know is we have a whole lot more assets that are available to us to be utilized that we haven't been utilizing because we haven't been managing it correctly. So it's like the story of the Syrians during the Yom Kippur War, who basically started charging the Golan Heights with thousands of tanks, but they all stopped in the middle of the field because they all ran out of fuel and they all lost their lives and thousands of tanks were destroyed. They didn't plan the logistics. They underutilized the capacity that they had, and as a result, it ended in catastrophic failure. So that's what the president is in essence doing right now, is he's going back and he's reevaluating what they have to them, how they're managing it, what's being done. By the way, we're seeing this in all areas of not just the military, but all areas of the government. This is, by the way, the reason why all these politicians are losing their minds with Elon Musk, because they're identifying all these things that are getting spent. I mean, think about this, guys. Prior to the president coming into office, we were literally a day and a half away from giving $50 million, not 15, $50 million to Gaza for condoms. Earmarked for condoms. Do you think anybody's using those over there? You think anybody... Again, all we're doing is we're arming the enemy. So as ominous as the rest of the world feels around us, when we cut off their access to all of those resources and we start maximizing and managing them ourselves, their capability of becoming some kind of a powerful first strike force is gone. It's like it's diminished. And one of the perhaps the most significant examples of this is what happened with Iran when Iran launched the largest missile attack in world history, and it did nothing. And that's Israel with very limited resources. That's Israel using their Iron Dome system to make consequential decisions to allow the missiles that weren't going to hit anything to fall, and to choose to intercept missiles that they knew could harm people. And that strategy has worked for them, and it has a 98.3 success rate. So it's just a matter of functional management. That's what it is.
Third part of my question that might be the biggest elephant in the room is what about our country's still very woked out. The media,
Yep.
Democratic Party is still out of their freaking minds. So how is Trump going to be able to handle the internal resistance to this that will be massive?
The most significant part of this is going to be his cabinet appointments. As long as the cabinet appointments come in, and they will, I don't assume that they won't, it's going to be ugly and there's going to be a fight. But we know from the popular vote and we know from the reaction of the country that an overwhelming population in this country is very angry with how much harm has been done in our nation. So my greatest fear, by the way, with this whole woke thing, is that we will look at this, we will relish in the prosperity that comes as a result of it, and we will forget what got us here in the first place, and that was our insatiable appetite for sin. If America forsakes their sin and clings to the true and living God, there may be a chance. I also feel a lot better over the fact that some of the people that are in the most critical positions in our country are very proud to say that they're God-fearing believers. Pete Hegseth, his greatest claim to fame is the fact that God delivered him from alcoholism and cheating on his wife. And what he said one of his proudest moments was when he was recently baptized at his church. And this is, by the way, while he's running to be the Secretary of Defense. So when you see people like that, you have the guy that's going to be the ambassador to Israel, who's an ordained pastor, who believes in Bible prophecy, and who loves every aspect of what could be done in supporting the nation of Israel. You have cabinet positions right now where people are so fed up with what's going on that they're going out of their way to reverse the effects of some of the damage that was done in the previous cabinet positions. And then you have a president who said that he was going to be tolerant towards certain forms of abortion, and everything he's done since he's come into office has eliminated the possibilities of abortion going on everywhere. Like, the hope and the prayer, and this is the thing we got to get on our knees and pray for, is that we do not forsake the Christian roots of all of this, right? That we keep our eyes on Jesus. That's the prayer. We have to pray that prayer. If we don't pray that prayer, we're in trouble.
Before I go to my question, I'd just like to make a comment on like spiritual revival. In my college at Cal State Long Beach, I've seen more people reading the Bible now. I've seen more people. Just today, I passed by 3 different people handing out tracts and stuff. It's really awesome. And like me personally, I know I've been like praying in the past 3 months, probably more than I've ever prayed my entire life. So it's kind of awesome what God's doing like to the young people right now.
Yeah, and I just to make a quick comment, this is amazing. More Bibles have been sold in the last 8 months than has been sold in the last 4 years, is what I'm told. It's at an all-time high, and I want to make myself clear. I do want to see revival in the church happening. Remember, the word revival speaks of Christians renewing their walk with the Lord and reviving. When we talk about what you're describing a spiritual awakening, which in my opinion is far more consequential, because when a spiritual awakening takes place, it oftentimes ensues revival. Sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes revival ensues spiritual awakening. The one thing that I get very emotional of is that when you look at the story of how Donald Trump came to this country, Donald Trump would not be in this country had it not been for one of the largest spiritual awakenings that ever took place. And when you hear the story of his mother and how that, I mean, you're talking about a family who God has used throughout the generations to bring spiritual awakening to wherever they were. So, and that's something, I did a message on this. I said, I believe that the Lord could potentially do this with our president. And that was before he got elected. So I really believe that something like this could happen. So it's encouraging to hear what you're saying. I think it's really encouraging. It's awesome, especially at Cal State, man. Long Beach, holy smokes, that's been the center of hell. I know my sister, I think, did her undergrad over there before she went to UCI. But yeah, God bless you. That's hard.
we definitely still have some crazies, but
Yeah, I'll bet.
my
Tell the
question-
professors to quit.
a few of them actually. So my question is, I know that like God can bless like what's happening right now with Trump like going into Gaza, and I'm sure like whatever he's planning on doing is from God, but logistically, how are we gonna pay for all of this? Like, what do you think that's gonna look like?
I have one country, Saudi Arabia. I think Saudi Arabia is going to do the majority of this. In my opinion, from the things that I've been reading and all the research I've been doing, because I was doing research on this before I ever heard what I heard today, because the big question is, what happens after the war? What's the cost of rebuilding Gaza? I've heard estimates as high as 500 billion. I've heard estimates as low as 100 billion. Saudi Arabia just made a commitment, an open-ended commitment, saying we will spend a minimum of $600 billion. $600 billion in the American economy. My guess is it's probably going to be as high as $1 trillion. Saudi Arabia can do that. Saudi Arabia is easily capable of doing that. If you just look at Naum, which is the city that they're building right now, that city is taking up 25% of all global raw material, all global assets, and they're paying for it and making money doing it. They're exorbitantly rich, exorbitantly. So my assessment or my assumption is that it's getting paid for by Saudi Arabia. The other thing that we should also note, because I think this is also a really funny thing. I don't know if I want to call it funny, but the type of things that people were skating away from in talking about, Trump is running towards. Like here's a great example. He's demanding that oil from Iraq go into our pocket. He's also demanding that we obtain oil assets from other countries that we've been helping, including Venezuela, even though we don't need it, but he wants to make the money that comes from selling it so that he can utilize it in other places. The consequentiality of the idea of what he's doing with tariffs alone is manipulating the world's GDP. Let me give you another example of this. He's telling Canada, which now Canada's back down because Canada, as dumb as Trudeau is, his father gave him a little bit of wisdom. Castro, I'm joking, but gave him a little bit of wisdom. But think about, no, I'm not joking. But think about this. Let me just do some math for you when you start talking about the GDP of the whole world. If you, let's not even do that. Let's actually, for example, let's just talk about just simply the GDP of Canada. 73% of Canada's GDP is sold to the United States of America, comes from exports to the United States of America. Do you know what that represents in terms of imports for the United States of America as it relates to Canada? Just under 5% is the new number. Just under 5%. The 13% calculations that you've been hearing deal with a weird, funny, fuzzy number that's been coming from Anwar, okay? And the portion of Alaska that doesn't even belong to Canada. It's an energy number. Let's take the 13% number and throw it where it's at. Do you know what percentage of the resources that Canada provides to us represents the number that the United States is incapable of producing? 0. If Trudeau says, I'm going to retaliate against the United States by charging 100 or 25% tariff over $150 billion, Trump is sitting in the office going, idiota. You want to know why? Because all that's going to do is it's going to cause Americans to say, I'm not buying your Canadian garbage. And guess what? They go from now having to pay 25% on 73% of their exports to basically not having exports to pay 25% on because Americans won't buy it from them. And then American companies will become the prime beneficiaries of that by growing in their internal production And then they'll actually start exporting to other countries that don't want to play the same games that Canada wants to do. Now, that hurts a little bit, and a lot of people are playing the Reagan video. You've seen the Ronald Reagan video that's going around where Ronald Reagan basically said that the worst thing you can do is impose tariffs on other nations because it'll hurt the United States of America. Well, God bless Ronald Reagan. He'll go down in history and has gone down in history as one of the most consequential presidents that we've ever had in United States history. He's one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. But let me just give you data. Let's just throw a number out your way, okay? What percentage of world GDP, what percentage of the world's GDP is represented by China during the time of the Reagan administration? How much in exports represents the world's GDP by China at the time during Reagan? 1983 specifically. Anyone want to give me a guess? 1.7% of the world's GDP. 1.7%. What percentage of the GDP represented all of America's export during that time? Anyone guess? 28%. 28% of all of America's exports represented the world's GDP in 1983. As of 2024, what representation in percentage represents China's exports to the whole world in the world GDP number? Anybody want to get an idea? 19.8%. 19.8%. That's more than 10 times. Okay? 19.8%. Do you know what the world's GDP for United States export is as of 2024? Anybody? Anybody know what that percentage is? Just under 25%. We went down in 40 years while everybody else went up. The point is, it's still more, but the policy has been from that point on, no imposition of tariffs. And we've been increasing the output of other nations while we're killing the output of ours. Do you want to know why right now you can go to Europe and you can buy a Mercedes-Benz that would cost you $130,000 in this country right now? You can buy it for $30,000 over there. You want to know why you could do that? Because they don't tariff the sale of any of that stuff. They don't do that to themselves, but they tariff the heck out of us in buying it. And you want to know why? If you want to buy a Chevy in like Egypt or you want to buy a Chevy in Europe, it's like it costs more than the most expensive Mercedes here because we're tariffed. Okay? Let me give you one number. This number will make you sick. I'll read it to you so you get a better idea of what it looks like. Okay? Take a look at this number. And this is all in response to this question. Take a look at this number here, and this tells everything. Okay? Let me bring it up here. I know I've got it here. Okay, because I saved this because this one just struck me. This one just shocked me. Okay? Here are some of the historic tariffs that Canada hits America with. So Trudeau is crying over 25%. So let me give you an idea. By the way, just so that you know, anybody have an idea of the number in billions that the trade deficit is between Canada and the United States of America? Anybody have any idea? Some people estimate as high as $350 billion trade deficit to our disadvantage, not to our advantage, just so that you know. Okay? Here it is. Tariffs from Canada to America. Milk, 270%. Cheese, 245%. Butter, 298%. Chicken, 238%. Sausage, 69.9%. Barley seed, 57.8%. Bovine meat, 26.5%. Cars, 25%. HVAC, anything that's HVAC oriented, 45%. Vacuums, 35%. Cable boxes, 35%. TVs, 45%. TVs that get imported from China into Canada with the Canadian name slapped onto it and then brought to us. That's an export that can be as much as $130 or 130% tariff if you really calculate it. Why do you think TVs are so much more expensive? Okay? Steel, 25%. Wonder why Trump always talks about steel? Because if there's that much of a trade deficit in steel, Then the cost of everything goes up. Buildings, all of that stuff. Aluminum, 45%. Copper, 48%. And people are calling Trump crazy for the imposition of these tariffs? They don't know what's going on. They have absolutely no idea what's going on. And yes, the average financially illiterate American is going to suffer immensely in their minds because, like that Dum-Dum did, this is beer. See, I'm holding it in my hand. This is going to cost more at the Super Bowl. This is my avocado. You don't even know what an avocado is, dude. You've probably never. But my whole point is like, if you understand economic principles, you're able to leverage the money that you have in your pocket as the average American. These tariffs are going to come in your favor. They're actually going to be a good thing for you. They're not going to be a bad thing for you. They're going to be a great thing for you. Even if you did something as nominal as trading in the market, if you understand the way derivatives of stocks work, you're going to be in puts all day. It's going to be fun. And then when it starts reversing, you're going to end up walking away with a whole bunch of money in your pocket. And I'm not giving anybody financial advice here. I'm telling you that right now, especially you guys watching on the internet. This is not Pastor James giving anybody financial advice. But what I'm serious. I'm telling you that because lots of people treat the stock market like it's their own, like, roll the dice and then here you go, because they're too lazy to study it and learn it and then actually make consequential decisions. But my point is this. My point is, if you become just a little bit more financially literate, you're going to really appreciate what the president is doing. Look, the president did not take what appears to be a $17 million inheritance and turn it into as high as $8.5 billion at one point in his life by being a foolish person. And then when you see someone like AOC saying, well, did you see this guy, Elon Musk? He's the dumbest billionaire I've ever seen and he doesn't know these systems or whatever. Okay, let's think about this. You came into America with is it an H-1 visa? Is that? No, Elon. No, Elon Musk. He came into America on one of these work visas with nothing in his pocket, and he turned it into $500 billion in his own personal net worth. You think the man doesn't know anything about systems or economics or any of that kind of thing? He's relanding rockets that were in space on the ground, and he's a stupid man. These people are panicking because they're recognizing that the minds of a lot of people are opening, and these decisions that are being made are going to be immensely helpful to the country if the country will just hold on and do the right thing. Instead of spending so much time focusing on how to misgender a person or not misgender a person, you actually start thinking about the skill set and the talent involved in all of this. It becomes a completely different thing. She was a bartender. Yeah, she was a bartender. I was shocked to find out that she actually has a degree. Boston University. I didn't even know that. No, they say economics. I'm thinking maybe home ec or I forgot the title of the degree, but the title of the degree is kind of like one of those, African lesbian studies type things. It was ridiculous. But anyway, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Okay, other question? We'll take one more because I want you guys to have some time in your group. I want you to have some time in your small group. Okay. Okay. All right. One more question? No, go ahead.
How likely is Canada to become the 51st state?
I don't know. That's a whole bunch of speculation. Probably unlikely. Although there are some very rich people in Canada that want to see that happen. But Trudeau has egg all over his face. He's embarrassed. We don't want the French Quebec. Yeah, no. I don't think anybody does. Yeah. There's, say again? Sure. I guess so. We'll take one more. But then that's it. I want you guys to have some group time.
All right. From this, what would be your biblical verse takeaway regarding this?
A couple of things. So I think that what we're seeing right now from a prophetic stand is I think we're watching what appears to be the formation of the geopolitics necessary to bring home what we read about in Ezekiel 38. I think so. When you look at the stand that Saudi Arabia is going to take in defending the position of Israel, we're watching it all happening. It's already coming into play. The other thing that I would tell you, if we start bringing up scriptural issues, number one of my favorite verses, and that's Matthew 10:16, be wise as serpents, gentle as doves. The other thing is the principle that we learn from the Apostle Paul, where he tells us to redeem the time. Right? This is something that we have to remember. in that God has called us to be people who understand what the will of the Lord is and making the most of all of the things that are put in front of us. You don't have a lot of time in front of you, and you've got to get rid of the mindset that this world has taught you that your time is the least valuable thing. I see people all around me that trade their time for all kinds of things. They trade their time for money. They trade their time for this and for that. And I just think it's such a broken way of thinking. God says that our most valuable asset that he's given to us is our time, and he expects us to utilize that time to the fullest. So buy your time back. Do whatever you can to buy your time back, and then use that time to the maximum. Don't waste it. And I think this is such a great example of this. Look, we talk about the fact that Trump is so versatile and he knows so much or whatever. The people that are the closest to him, I have relationships with, and you know what I hear a lot? He doesn't sleep. He's literally awake 21 hours out of the day. And they're 21 productive hours. They're not like 21 slouching hours. He doesn't sit on his laurels. He doesn't, he's very active. He's very busy. He earns his sleep hours. We should all be that way. We should all be people who do not waste our time. We have to take advantage of the time that God has put in front of us. And look, I'll say this. I don't have a problem saying it. I'm sick and tired of seeing this culture produce men who are throwing their lives away, playing video games for half their lives, watching TV, doing unproductive stuff. It's like, do you understand the kind of opportunity that we have living in the time and the day that we have? Do you know there's so much more that we could do? There's no reason in the world that any of us should be lacking in any way, especially living in this country and taking advantage of the opportunities that have been allotted to us. I think it's sad. And I hear people make excuses for misusing their time in all kinds of ways. I hear the family excuse. I hear there's so many different excuses. I think that I'll scream the next time somebody wants to lecture me about work-life balance. Tell me where work-life balance is in the Bible. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as work-life balance. That's such a lie that the enemy continues to communicate to people, right? There's very spiritual principles in what we do. And perhaps one of the most significant of the spiritual laws is that you will reap what you sow. So if you sow work-life balance, you're going to sow nominal life. You're going to reap nominal life. You're not going to get anything extraordinary. If you sow hard work, dedication, if you sow utilizing your time in a way that's directed and significant and effective, you're going to reap the benefits of it. And then just remember, practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So whatever you're practicing, make sure you're practicing the right thing, because if not, all you're going to do is make a bad habit permanent. And that's what I would say. None of us have an excuse for being in a disadvantaged position in the country in which we live. We don't. And if we follow biblical principles, we can make the most of it. We just can. We just can. So stop wasting time. I think all of this is a reminder of that. It's the most consequential time. Look, can I just give you one example of this? I'm hearing people right now on the YouTube troposphere saying this. This is such a tough time to be on YouTube. This is a tough time to be on social media. It's so saturated and there's so much going on. Okay, I would argue that the more saturated it gets, the more of an opportunity you actually have. Because the more saturated it gets, the more nominalized the field becomes and the less excellent you see people. The competition goes away. Can I give you an example of how these opportunities are showing up? Okay. Let's just say you want to start a YouTube page where all you do is cover the news, okay? You realize that last week, the Trump administration just gave you a free pass? You could go online and apply to be a correspondent and have access to all the material that the White House makes available. I mean, you could literally take a trip to the White House, and if you're cleared by Secret Service, sit in the briefing room as they pick on you. My point behind it all is we have opportunities around us everywhere, folks. It's never about whether or not we have opportunities. It's about whether or not you're prepared for the opportunity. If you're prepared for the opportunity, when it comes, you'll be ready. If you're not, you won't be. It's that simple. So don't waste your time. Yes, sir.
What topic do you want us to discuss as you break?
Probably that. You know what? I think that's a great topic to discuss. In light of all the things that are happening in this world right now, how do we maximize the position that we're in? Talk together and keep one another accountable about the areas you're wasting time in. Like, really take that seriously. Because that presents this incredible opportunity for your lives to be so dramatically changed that you'll never be the same. So what I would say is do some reflection, do some self-evaluation, and ask yourself, what are areas? By the way, I do this with myself all the time. This is something that I constantly ask myself because I'm constantly aware of the fact that I waste time in different ways. I want to become better at what I do. I want to become more excellent. I want to give my children the type of freedom that they should have financially so that they can do what God's called them to do. It's that simple. My goal and my prayer is that by the time each of my children are 12 years old, they'll all be financially independent. That's the goal. 13 if I'm really going crazy. But my point is, it has nothing to do with them being rich. It has nothing to do with them having extra money in their pocket. It has everything to do with feeling free to do what God has asked them to do without ever making money a part of the consideration. Those are admirable goals. Are you making the same goals? Hopefully you are. Hopefully you're thinking about that. And if you're single, you better make these goals right now. Because it's not like it's gonna manifest in front of you, and then all of a sudden you're gonna have a lot of time. You're gonna realize, oh my gosh, how much time has gone by. I remember when my son was born. I remember when my middle baby came to me at 19 days old. And I remember when my oldest came to me at 2 years, 11 months old. I cannot believe that my middle girl's going to be 4 and my oldest is going to be 7. I can't believe that my son just turned 2. The time goes by super fast. You're not guaranteed the next day, so make the most of it. You guys should have that conversation. Even if you dedicate 25 minutes to it, it's worth having. Have that conversation. And speaking of which, I'm going to go take advantage of some time and go back to the studio and wrap up some loose ends. So let's break, okay? Love you guys. Good stuff happening.